A mysterious man informs a group of strange beings that it is the time to strike. In his dimension, Zangetsu wakes Ichigo Kurosaki up and asks him if he can hear anything, but the latter thinks it is okay that he cannot. In the Seireitei, the captains and lieutenants of the 13 court guard squads are confused as to why their Zanpakutō are not working right. At night, a group of Ryoka attempt to enter Shigekuni Yamamoto Genryusai's quarters. Yamamoto and his lieutenant Chojiro Sasakibe confront the intruders, but what they see leaves them in shock. Later, Yamamoto calls all captains and lieutenants to Sokyoku Hill. There they are met by the mysterious man who calls himself Muramasa. Sajin Komamura tries to attack him with his Zanpakutō Tenkin, but it appears in a human form and turns on him, ending the battle by knocking him unconscious with one swing of the blade. The other Soul Reapers attempt to release their Zanpakutō to attack, but are somehow unable to do so. The Zanpakutō assume human-like forms and join Muramasa, who states that the Soul Reapers' Zanpakutō have renounced them and have declared war. Ichigo finds Rukia Kuchiki injured in the world of the living, whilst a strange woman who uses Rukia's abilities is attacking her. It is revealed that this woman is in fact Rukia's Zanpakutō, Sode no Shirayuki. Ichigo successfully forces the renegade Zanpakutō into submission, and Sode no Shirayuki retreats back to the Soul Society. Ichigo brings Rukia to Kisuke Urahara's shop, where she reveals that the Soul Reapers' Zanpakutō have attacked their masters, and that her brother Byakuya Kuchiki was seemingly defeated by his own Zanpakutō, Senbonzakura. Yoruichi Shihoin returns from investigating the Soul Society and reveals that everyone who met with Muramasa has survived. The remaining Soul Reapers of the 13 court guard squads have regrouped to the 4th Division headquarters, while they try to re-establish their defenses and learn more about the Zanpakutō rebellion. In the middle of the night, Rukia leaves for the Soul Society, apparently in search of Byakuya. Ichigo and Yoruichi leave in an attempt to go after Rukia and to save the Soul Society. Rukia rushes back to the 6th Division headquarters and reunites with Renji Abarai. However, Byakuya's status remains unknown after the night of the rebellion. Ichigo and Yoruichi arrive in the Soul Society and split up to search for clues. Rukia returns to Byakuya's compound, only to find Sode no Shirayuki there. Rukia tries to reason with her Zanpakutō, but Sode no Shirayuki demands her freedom. After a fierce battle, Rukia loses to Sode no Shirayuki, but Ichigo arrives to rescue her from being frozen to death. However, he too is defeated by Sode no Shirayuki. Rukia attempts to get Sode no Shirayuki back to her by telling the Zanpakutō how important she is to her. Using her Kido powers, she constrains herself with Sode no Shirayuki as an attempt to convince Sode no Shirayuki that one could not live without the other. However, the resulting explosion injures Rukia severely. Sode no Shirayuki has a change of heart and attempts to reach out to her mistress, but Muramasa arrives and holds her back. Muramasa introduces himself to Ichigo and states that he is a Zanpakutō. Muramasa sends Sode no Shirayuki away, and Ichigo asks why he wanted the Zanpakutō to gain independence over the Soul Reapers. Although he does not give the reason, Muramasa replies that Zanpakutō can separate themselves away, regardless of being the soul of a Soul Reaper, and he is a good example of one. Muramasa uses illusions to overwhelm Ichigo and pins him to the ground, where he proceeds to drag Zangetsu out of him. Once Zangetsu manifests, he immediately attacks Ichigo. Meanwhile, Mayuri Kurotsuchi begins experimenting on himself in order to research the manifestation of the Zanpakutō. After Ichigo is seemingly defeated by Zangetsu, Ichigo transforms into his inner hollow form and strikes back. Muramasa tries a sneak attack, but the inner hollow immediately regenerates and attacks him. Before his inner hollow can do anything else, Ichigo manages to regain control of his body and falls unconscious. Rukia is found by the 4th Division and sent to recover from her injuries. While Shuhei Hisagi patrols the Seireitei, he is attacked by his sadistic Zanpakutō, Kazeshini. Renji searches the ruins for any clues of Byakuya, who is still missing. He instead encounters Zabimaru in the form of a monkey woman named Saru and a snake boy named Hebi. Both entities of Zabimaru have no intention of returning to their original owner and attack Renji. According to Zabimaru, all Zanpakutō have heard a voice telling them to follow their instincts to attack their masters. Ichigo wakes up in Zangetsu's dimension, but the old man is missing. He sees Muramasa and attacks him, but the man immediately incapacitates him and summons his inner hollow. Muramasa has begun to take an interest in the inner hollow and uses his powers to freeze it in place. Thinking that it has been subdued, Muramasa approaches it, but the inner hollow merely tricks him with its act and lashes out straight at him. Jushiro Ukitake and Shunsui Kyoraku discuss the possibility that defeating the Zanpakutō spirits will destroy the Zanpakutō themselves. Renji continues fighting with Zabimaru, who taunts him for his weakness. Hisagi fights with Kazeshini and, disgusted by his desire to take life, plans on killing him even if he loses his Zanpakutō. Ichigo's inner hollow fights with Muramasa inside his mind until Muramasa uses his powers to restrain him, which then allows Ichigo sees through Muramasa's powers and saves his inner hollow. Ichigo then steps up to fight, stating that the inner hollow is a part of him as well. When Zabimaru threatens to kill Rukia, Renji remembers Ichigo's reason for fighting and then his own, which in turn enables him to regain his resolve, managing to activate Zabimaru's Shikai. Kazeshini wounds Hisagi in a surprise attack, but Izuru Kira intervenes to help him, using Kido to bind Kazeshini long enough for the two of them to escape. Renji's fight with Zabimaru continues, and Zabimaru takes the advantage when they are able to activate Bankai. Renji considers his own weaknesses and tricks Zabimaru into taking his sword, then breaks it with a Kido spell, and then he defeats Zabimaru by firing the broken shards at them. Ichigo fights Zangetsu, struggling when Zangetsu activates Bankai. He uses Getsuga Tenshō, working together with his inner hollow to defeat Zangetsu, and forces Muramasa to retreat. Zangetsu reveals that Muramasa is using a technique to awaken the instincts of the Zanpakutō, and by doing so, he can control them. Ichigo reports his findings of Muramasa's abilities to Ukitake, Kyoraku, and Retsu Unohana. In order to find out about Muramasa's effects on Zanpakutō, Ichigo and Ikkaku Madarame patrol the Seireitei to seek out the entities. Meanwhile, someone breaks into a compound and knocks out the Soul Reapers guarding the area. Marichio Omaeda stumbles on the unconscious guards and investigate, only to encounter his Zanpakutō spirit, Gegetsuburi, and Ikkaku's Zanpakutō spirit, Hyōrinmaru. Omaeda and Gegetsuburi are just about to fight when Ichigo and Ikkaku interrupt. Omaeda is knocked out of the fight, leaving Ichigo to battle Gegetsuburi, while Ikkaku fights Hyōrinmaru. Ichigo defeats Gegetsuburi, but Ikkaku is wounded by Hyōrinmaru's Bankai. Just as he attempts to continue the battle, Ukitake, Kyoraku, and Suì-Fēng arrive to surround Hyōrinmaru, but he uses his Bankai to get away. However, they manage to obtain Gegetsuburi. Ichigo goes after Hyōrinmaru, but the entity escapes when Senbonzakura's petals block Ichigo's route. Ichigo continues searching for Byakuya and encounters the Zanpakutō spirits of Haineko and Tobiume, who are looking for Hyōrinmaru. Rangiku Matsumoto and Momo Hinamori arrive to fight their respective Zanpakutō spirits. Momo uses a Kido spell to knock Tobiume into Haineko, causing the two to begin arguing. Ichigo encounters Hyōrinmaru, who cannot remember his name or his master. He attempts to freeze Ichigo and leave, but Toshiro Hitsugaya confronts him. Elsewhere, Muramasa encounters and kills a large group of Jillians. Ichigo is still trapped in the ice prison Hyōrinmaru trapped him in as Hitsugaya, and Hyōrinmaru confront each other. Meanwhile, Rangiku and Momo fight their Zanpakutō in the woods and finally manage to overpower them with Kido spells. As Hitsugaya and Hyōrinmaru begin to fight, Hitsugaya tries to seal him, but is shocked as Hyōrinmaru effortlessly dissolves the seal into fragments of ice. Hitsugaya began to recall his past during his first encounter with Hyōrinmaru to convince him. Hitsugaya managed to activate Hyōrinmaru's Shikai, thus managed to convince Hyōrinmaru that Hitsugaya is his master. Despite freezing himself along with his Zanpakutō and losing consciousness, Hitsugaya manages to convince Hyōrinmaru of his identity. Mayuri experiments on Gegetsuburi and discovers that the Zanpakutō can only return to their owner's control once they are defeated by their owners. Rangiku and Momo send their Zanpakutō back to the 4th Division barracks, but an unknown assailant attacks the cart carrying them. Ichigo meets with Rangiku and Momo, and then reaches Muramasa, who is having difficulties using his abilities in his current body. Ichigo attempts to attack Muramasa, but is stopped by Senbonzakura. Ichigo fights Senbonzakura and gains the upper hand before Byakuya arrives. Byakuya reveals that he has joined Muramasa as part of following his internal desire to protect his pride, and then disappears with Muramasa and Senbonzakura. Ukitake, Kyoraku, Renji, and Unohana discuss Byakuya's betrayal, discovering that a Zanpakutō will be unusable if killed by anyone other than its owner. Byakuya returns to the hideout of the Zanpakutō and proves his loyalty by defeating and seemingly killing Sode no Shirayuki, leaving Rukia unable to use her Zanpakutō. Rukia and Renji investigate Byakuya's office, but Byakuya arrives with Senbonzakura, tossing Rukia the broken remains of her Zanpakutō. Zabimaru arrives to help Renji fight Byakuya and Senbonzakura, but they are overpowered. Tenkin, Hyōrinmaru, Kazeshini, Ruri Iro Kujaku, and Gonryomaru suddenly arrive. The 2nd Division surrounds the Zanpakutō, and their owners come out to fight them. As Ichigo goes to confront Byakuya, he is intercepted by Senbonzakura, and they fight each other using their Bankai. Renji and Zabimaru move to prevent Byakuya from leaving. Kira begins fighting Kazeshini, suspecting that its personality is based on Hisagi's suppressed negative impulses. Suì-Fēng fights Gonryomaru and Tenkin at once, but she is surprised by a smoke attack. Yumechika faces Ruri Iro Kujaku, and the two exchange insults, while 4th Division Lieutenant Issane Kotetsu and 7th Division Lieutenant Tetsuzaemon Iba go to assist the wounded at the scene of the battle when Ashisogi Jizo appears. Suì-Fēng continue her fight with Gonryomaru and Tenkin, but then her Zanpakutō Suzumabachi appears and attacks her. Ruri Iro Kujaku gains the advantage over Yumechika and begins to use his special ability on Yumechika. Issane and Iba attempt to retreat from Ashisogi Jizo, but Haineko and Tobiume arrive, and Ashisogi Jizo paralyzes Issane's legs. Byakuya manages to defeat Renji and Zabimaru. Kira manages to capture Kazeshini by tricking him into thinking he could still use his Zanpakutō in order to unsettle Kazeshini, but he is soon attacked by his own Zanpakutō, Wabisuke. When Ichigo sees this, he desperately fights his way past Senbonzakura to get to Kira, but that is until Kenpachi Zaraki arrives. Kenpachi appears just before Wabisuke is about to finish off Kira. Wabisuke turns to strike Kenpachi, but Kenpachi easily kills Wabisuke off, leaving Kira unable to use his Zanpakutō anymore. Yachiru Kusajishi appears as well and tells everyone that she and Kenpachi were off hunting hollows and somehow got lost on the way back. Senbonzakura takes on Kenpachi, but is overwhelmed by the latter's enormous spiritual power. Byakuya intervenes and fights Kenpachi while Senbonzakura resumes his fight with Ichigo. Yumechika breaks out of Ruri Iro Kujaku's binding vines and defeats him, reclaiming his Zanpakutō. Ichigo continues fighting Senbonzakura while Kenpachi fights Byakuya, but Ashisogi Jizo appears and uses its Bankai, spraying poison gas over the battlefield, enabling Senbonzakura and Byakuya to escape. Ashisogi Jizo is chased by Yachiru and later gets captured by Kenpachi. Mayuri blows up Ashisogi Jizo, revealed to be his Zanpakutō, causing it to return to its sealed form. Suì-Fēng has difficulty hitting the small Suzumebachi, but manages to defeat her. Yoruichi meets with Ichigo and the captains present, revealing that she knows Yamamoto's location. Yamamoto is then shown as a prisoner of the Zanpakutō, with Sogyo no Kotowari, Katen Kyokotsu, and Minazuki, recognized as the group of Ryoka from before, encasing him in a barrier. Yoruichi discusses with Ukitake, Kyoraku, and Kenpachi on how they are going to rescue Yamamoto, knowing that they will be running into high-class Zanpakutō. Meanwhile, Kazeshini comes back to the hideout and faints from exhaustion. Kyoraku and Ukitake meet their materialized Zanpakutō, Sogyo no Kotowari and Katen Kyokotsu, while Kenpachi and Yachiru, who get lost in the cave, come across Gonryomaru and Tenkin. In the meantime, Ichigo and Yoruichi encounter Haineko and Tobiume, who both are defeated by Yoruichi. Ichigo heads on and is led to Kazeshini by Minazuki. Ichigo defeats Kazeshini, causing the latter to break into pieces. Muramasa stands in Ichigo's way of rescuing Yamamoto and goads him into releasing his hollow powers against him. Meanwhile, Yoruichi, Ukitake, and Kyoraku realize that something is amiss and break away from their opponents. Muramasa tricks Ichigo into firing his most powerful Getsuga Tenshō at him, but deflects the attack into Yamamoto's barrier, shattering it just as Yoruichi, Ukitake, and Kyoraku arrive to prevent this from happening. Muramasa reveals that Yamamoto encased himself in the barrier to prevent him from stealing Ryujin Jaka, but with Ichigo's hollow-based attack, it would allow Muramasa to easily obtain Yamamoto's Zanpakutō entity. When Muramasa says that he has no need for the other entities anymore, Katen Kyokotsu and Sogyo no Kotowari attack him, but end up having their physical forms destroyed by Ryujin Jaka. Muramasa makes his escape with Ryujin Jaka, while Yamamoto reveals to the others that Muramasa intends to destroy the 13 court guard squads with Ryujin Jaka. Ichigo, Yoruichi, Ukitake, Kyoraku, and Yamamoto are surrounded by a wall of flames created by Ryujin Jaka. Yoruichi escapes underground through a fissure that she opens using her Shunko technique, but Tobiume and Haineko use their fireball and sand attacks to cave it in behind Yoruichi. Ichigo attempts to escape by jumping over the wall of flames, but is unsuccessful even with his hollow powers. Yamamoto reveals that Muramasa's plan is to destroy Karakura Town in order to free his owner, Koga Kuchiki, who has been sealed there. Upon arriving at Karakura Town, Muramasa stumbles upon Orihime Inoue and blacks out. After waking up from recovery and asking Orihime who she is, Uryu Ishida and Yasutora Chad Sado arrive to take out Muramasa. Ichigo makes a final attempt at jumping over the wall of flames, and just before he is defeated and completely enveloped in fire, Hitsugaya and Hyōrinmaru arrive to save him. Hitsugaya and Hyōrinmaru both activate their Bankai to help get Ichigo out of the flames. Kenpachi continues his fight against Tenkin. Yoruichi outmaneuvers Haineko and Tobiume while trying to convince them that Muramasa betrayed them. Yamamoto, Ukitake, Kyoraku, Hitsugaya, and Hyōrinmaru plan to defeat Ryujin Jaka together. Uryu and Chad arrive to fight Muramasa, but he evades all their attacks and Senbonzakura arrives to help him. Muramasa tries to use his ability on Chad and incapacitates him due to him not being a Soul Reaper. Orihime asks Muramasa about his motive, and Muramasa reveals that he wishes to be free of solitude. Rukia arrives as Muramasa tries to escape to unseal Koga. Muramasa manages to unseal Koga as Ichigo arrives to face him. In a flashback several centuries ago, it is revealed that Koga was part of the Kuchiki clan as the son-in-law of Ginrei Kuchiki and was overconfident in the abilities of his Zanpakutō. He helped put down a rebellion of Soul Reapers, but some grew suspicious of his power and had him attacked. He cut down his attackers, but he was framed for killing his own allies by a group of jealous, high-ranking Soul Reapers. He was imprisoned as a result, but he escaped with Muramasa's help. In the present, Koga awakens, repelling Ichigo and Rukia, then suddenly stabs Muramasa. The flashback continues and reveals that Koga killed the people who had framed him, but after Ginrei confronted him, he went insane and began killing anyone he perceived as an enemy. Muramasa tried to reach out to Koga, but eventually was no longer able to hear his voice. Koga was finally defeated and sealed away by Ginrei and Yamamoto. In the present, Muramasa asks why Koga stabbed him, as he had worked hard to bring about his return, but Koga responds that Zanpakutō are tools that obey their master's commands. He tries to finish off Muramasa, but Byakuya steps in, saying that he is no longer worthy to be called a soul reaper. Senbonzakura reveals that Byakuya had sworn to kill Koga and had been searching for how to unseal him. Muramasa offers Koga his power, but Koga breaks Muramasa, stating that he does not need help. Byakuya and Koga fight, but Koga gains the upper hand when he distorts Byakuya's senses. Senbonzakura helps dispel the effect though, and Byakuya manages to use Bankai on Koga. As Byakuya notes that Koga's failing was refusing to trust his Zanpakutō or anyone else, the two charge at each other. After Koga's defeat, Muramasa becomes unstable, as he had absorbed hollows in order to sustain himself without a master. Many hollows spill forth from his body, and he transforms into a form similar to an Arankar. Orihime tries to reach out to him to save him from his sorrow, but he attacks the group. Ichigo manages to slash through Muramasa, but he becomes even more unstable and transforms into a larger dome-shaped mass, engulfing Ichigo in the process. The formerly rebellious Zanpakutō return with their owners to help Ichigo and his friends in the battle. The Zanpakutō, having been released from their brainwashing with Mayuri's help, who also restored the destroyed Zanpakutō, fight the arriving Menos Grandes, but more come from a hole in the sky. Byakuya manages to seal the hole with spiritual energy gathered from all the other Soul Reapers. Despite their efforts, Ichigo remains trapped inside the dome. As the dome grows unstable and the Soul Reapers fight the Gillians outside, Ichigo fights Muramasa, who is beginning to become a hollow, inside Koga's inner realm, which is collapsing from the grudges of the hollows he consumed to sustain himself. Ichigo questions Muramasa's devotion to Koga, in spite of his apparent motives for freeing the Zanpakutō, insisting that he should know what a true bond between a Soul Reaper and a Zanpakutō is. Ichigo defeats Muramasa, causing the two to leave his inner world. Muramasa dies after realizing the error of his ways, and Byakuya thanks Ichigo. While Byakuya allows his squad to hold a hanami at his mansion, two strange attackers, one that is masked and the other resembling a satyr, arrive, but the masked one is quickly defeated by Sode no Shirayuki and Senbonzakura, who among all Zanpakutō have since rematerialized, while the satyr one escapes. Mayuri refers to these attackers as sword beasts, which are Zanpakutō whose masters have been killed. Rukia and Sode no Shirayuki try luring out the satyr sword beast by having a drinking party, but fail. Soon, Rukia and Sode no Shirayuki find the satyr sword beast attacking and eventually defeat him together and turning him in for study. Ukitake and Kyoraku become concerned at this development, noting that the Serite is still being rebuilt. In the real world, Ichigo encounters and fights a sword beast. When Hitsugaya comes to aid Ichigo, the sword beast retreats. Ukitake and Kyoraku infer that there are at least as many sword beasts as the number of Soul Reapers lost in the war, and the two plan on stabilizing the sword beasts to have them return to their sword forms, despite Mayuri's lack of interest. The sword beast is attacked by a hollow, but he manages to fuse with it. The hollow sword beast overpowers Haineko when she tries to fight him, but Ichigo is able to disarm him. The hollow sword beast fires a Kero blast at Ichigo, but Hitsugaya manages to destroy it, noting that the sword beasts are more dangerous than he had thought. Renji and Zabimaru come to the real world following a sword beast. Zabimaru's two halves, Saru and Hebi, split up to search. Although they quickly find a boomerang sword beast, he escapes. Hebi, having trouble doing anything due to being unseen by the public, meets Karen Kurosaki and Yuzu Kurosaki, the former being the only one able to see him, who both end up taking him home. Ichigo returns home at night only to find Hebi, who realizes that Ichigo is a substitute Soul Reaper. Hebi runs away, only to encounter the boomerang sword beast again. As they battle each other, Hebi has the advantage until the boomerang sword beast captures Karen. Renji and Saru come to rescue Hebi and defeat the boomerang sword beast. Ichigo takes Karen home, convincing her it was all a dream, even though she knew otherwise. Ikkaku, Hanataro Yamada, Nanao Ise, and Hozuki Maru are sent to investigate some thefts that have taken place and track the culprit to the sewers. They are attacked by a large monster, which manages to injure Ikkaku. The rest discover a white robot who has the stash of stolen items. The large monster, revealed to be a tentacle sword beast, attacks the group again. The robot heals Ikkaku and fires a powerful blast at the tentacle sword beast, destroying it. It is revealed that the robot is Hanataro's Zanpakutō, Hisagamaru, which had resisted Muramasa's control because it did not resent Hanataro. The group returns the stolen items, but Hisagamaru was separated from the group. When Ikkaku, Iba, Kira, and Hisagi go on a mission to fight a gang of sword beasts in the Rukongai, Kazeshini, despite being free of Muramasa's control, has a brief fight with Hisagi. After killing a sword beast, Kazeshini finds a dying man who begs him to take care of his child. Kazeshini is frequently annoyed by the child's behavior, but often shows concern for it. After defeating another sword beast that is attacking a woman who came for the child, he leaves the child with the woman and goes to confront Hisagi. Kazeshini faces Hisagi in one last fight, but is inhibited by a back wound obtained earlier while protecting the child and is defeated. While Ichigo, Rukia, and Urahara investigate a sword beast attacking students, a girl named Kyoko Haida, who has the ability to predict the future and know things she would otherwise not, transfers to Karakura High School. Orihime tries to become friends with her, but learns that her best friend, Mai Suzuki, rejected her after learning of her ability. A mouthless sword beast merges with Kyoko and tries to take over her body to kill Mai. Orihime uses her healing powers to separate the mouthless sword beast from Kyoko, and Ichigo manages to defeat it with Getsuga Tenshō. Afterward, Orihime and Kyoko become friends, with Orihime accepting Kyoko's abilities. While on a mission with Rengiku to fight sword beasts, Haineko encounters one named Narunosuke, whose master was a coward and who went with the others in order to become stronger. Haineko becomes friends with Narunosuke, sneaking him food and medicine despite the belief that the sword beasts inevitably lose control of themselves. As feared, Narunosuke gradually does lose control of his mind and body, and Rengiku arrives to deal with him. Haineko tries to stop her, but when Narunosuke becomes too dangerous, she is ultimately forced to destroy him. While delivering a hammer sword beast to the 12th Division barracks, Senbonzakura and Zabimaru find themselves caught in the barracks intruder containment system. After Senbonzakura fails to break the glass case with his shikai, much to Zabimaru's annoyance, Ashisogi Jizo passes by, but it is unable to hear them due to the glass case being soundproof. Ashisogi Jizo accidentally break the remote control, making an irritated Senbonzakura to use his Bankai to destroy the glass case, which sets off a lockdown mechanism. Senbonzakura and Zabimaru run past the closing gates, leading them to a control room that surprisingly monitors the perimeters of the Seiraite. Senbonzakura sets off explosions all over the place after messing around with all the buttons. When a maddened Ashisogi Jizo appears, Senbonzakura and Zabimaru each use their Bankai at it, destroying the control room as well as the rest of the barracks. This catches the attention of the other Soul Reapers, especially Renji, who is gravely disappointed. Kyoraku has Nanao go with the Kunoichi bodyguard of Katen Kyokotsu to find a sword beast. Nanao later spots the kunoichi bodyguard fighting a bearded sword beast, but she toys with him instead of trying to defeat him, which causes Nanao to become very concerned to the point of restraining her. Later, with Ranjiku's help, Nanao then tries to bond with kunoichi bodyguard. Nanao realizes that the kunoichi bodyguard takes an interest in cherry blossoms, pinning one to her hair. Not before long, the bearded sword beast returns, cutting Nanao's arm. Remembering that she set down her weapon down near a cherry blossom tree, the kunoichi bodyguard is rendered defenseless, although she still has the determination to fight back. When the bearded sword beast kicks the kunoichi bodyguard into a wall, he tries to finish Nanao off. That is, until Kyoraku shows up and defeats him. Kazeshini attacks a cleaver sword beast that has been cornered by the 9th Division, but the cleaver sword beast turns back into sword form before Kazeshini prepares for a fatal blow, confusing him. Kazeshini, Zabimaru, Hozukimaru, and Ruri Iro Kujaku gather together to discuss that an unknown sword beast is absorbing the spiritual energies of other sword beasts. It is shown that the unknown sword beast has done this to a yokai sword beast. The next day, the unknown sword beast attacks a lion sword beast, a face sword beast, and an ape sword beast in the streets of the Rukongai, absorbing each of their spiritual energies. All of the Zanpakutō decide to face this sword beast, recognized as Kirikaze, without their owners. As they struggle, their owners arrive and convince them that they give their little spiritual energy they have left to Renji, who is then able to activate his Bankai, finishing Kirikaze off once and for all. Although the Zanpakutō return to their sword forms, the Soul Reapers note that they can still feel the presence of their Zanpakutō.